Hey there guys, so with the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, it was time to go back and rank all the Spider-Man films. And this time I will be including the 2 Venom films. And I did this list like 2 years ago, but my opinion has changed since then a lot. And let's get started with number 11. At last place is Venom. Now I remember the first time I watched this and I didn't like it, but I watched it again recently before Venom 2 came out and it's okay. I mean, it's deeply flawed. I can nitpick the hell out of this film and the narrative is just a mess. But at the end of the day, this is fun, dumb popcorn entertainment, and Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock / Venom is really fun to watch, and that fun bromance comedy with that style to them is just great chemistry. I mean, by all means, I'm not saying this is a good film, but it has gotten slightly better over time. At number 10 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Out of all the Spider-Man films, this had the worst marketing. It released like 5 different trailers before the film came out, and by then we knew what was going to happen. Of course, this film was influenced by Death of the Stacy, so we knew who was going to die. Andrew Garfield is fine in this movie, but I couldn't take him seriously as Peter Parker with his on and off relationship with Gwen Stacy. You have 3 great actors play poorly written cartoonish villains. The film was trying so hard to set up this whole multiple universe, like having like the Amazing Spider-Man 3, having a Venom movie, having like a Sinister Six film, but the film forgets to try to be its own thing, and I think that's what killed it for me. I will say they did capture the essence of Spider-Man in one scene when this kid is getting bullied and Spider-Man comes and the bullies run away. He helps the kid up, fixes like toy whatever, fixes homework and walks him home, and I just thought that was just one of the best Spider-Man scenes in movie history. And number 9 is Venom Let There Be Carnage. Now it still has the same problems as the first movie, but it works on the highlights of the first movie, like doubling down the bromance between Eddie and Venom, which is great. Woody Harrelson as Cletus Cassidy and Carnage, oh my god, it was like a dream casting. He was great, and they were able to do so much with him with the PG-13 rating. And the film is actually only like an hour and 35 minutes, but it's such an easy breeze to watch. And number 8 is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3. Yes, I know it's not a good film, but it's not as bad as people are making out to be. I mean, the film is riddled with plot holes, like the symbiote conveniently crash lands where Peter is, and the symbiote doesn't make Peter a bad character. He kind of makes him awkward and cringe to watch. And the misfire was having 3 villains. I mean, the film's, it's not enough for 3 villains, but we were kind of proved wrong in No Way Home. But back then, I mean, having Venom in the last 15 minutes of the film, it just ruins the character, and with the whole Harry losing his memory, I just didn't like that. Plus, he becomes New Goblin. What is New Goblin? It would have been interesting if he became like Hobgoblin. But there is stuff I really like in this film. Like, I think Thomas Hayden Church as the Sandman is great. He's the best thing. And I love the CGI around him using the sand is astonishing. And I like the whole Mary Jane acting career is taking a dive. That was an interesting subplot. And there's some really great fight scenes. My favourite would be Black Suit Spider-Man versus Sandman Underground. I mean, if the film just stuck with 2 villains, Sandman and New Goblin, and saved Venom for the Spider-Man 4, I think this could have been a much better film. And number 7 is The Amazing Spider-Man. Now this film has grown on me a lot over the past several years, and I used to put Spider-Man 3 over it, but I think this is much more solid and straightforward, that has a really nice dark tone to it. Unfortunately, that's lost in the sequel, and the costume design, that was great, and unfortunately, again, that was lost in the sequel as well. Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, I think he's great. It took me a while to get used to him because I loved Tobey Maguire at the time, but I do think he's a bit too good looking, but he has such adorable chemistry with Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy. I mean, the film does have wasted potential, and I don't mind Lizard as the villain. I thought that was great. But the whole Peter Parker's parents, I just didn't care about that. And number 6 is Spider-Man Homecoming. It's a really good film, but it's not as great as my next top 5. Now, I always consider to be Homecoming a really good step towards great Spider-Man films. It just plays it too safe and it doesn't really take any risks. Tom Holland is great as Spider-Man, but the real scene stealer is Michael Keaton as the Vulture. One of the best MCU films, but to me, he's the best live-action Spider-Man film we've had so far, and I really can't wait to see him again. But he's not really a bad guy. He just does bad things because the system screwed him over and he wants to supply for his family. He's basically like the Walter White of the MCU. One of the best scenes in the MCU, acting wise, is when you got like Adrian Toomes threatening Peter Parker in the car, and it's just so brutal to watch. You could just sense that Peter Parker's just so scared. And number 5 is Spider-Man Far From Home. Now this one just filled me with pleasure and surprised me in so many ways. Originally I thought I wasn't going to like the whole idea of Spider-Man going around Europe, but it ended up to be so much fun and just great choice of locations. And I never knew it was so exciting to watch Spider-Man web sling and use his spider senses. Peter and MJ are just adorable to watch, and Jake Gyllenhaal is just so much fun to watch. And number 4 is the one that started all, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Now yes, today's standards it can be cheesy and outdated, but back then this, just like Richard Donner's Superman made you believe a man can fly, this one made you believe a man could climb up walls. I mean, it is a straightforward superhero origin story, but it has that distinct Sam Raimi horror style direction to it, and the cast was just so suited for their roles, whether it's Tobey Maguire, James Franco, Kristen Dunst, J.K. Simmons, William Dafoe. And number 3 is the latest film, Spider-Man No Way Home, the biggest Spider-Man film yet. And this is just a grin-inducing epic adventure. This is the heartfelt, emotional Spider-Man film we've had yet in the MCU. Tom Holland's best performance to date. This is 20 years of films, including the not so good films, to make one great film. And the villains have a lot to do in this film, and having all 3 Spider-Mans in this film is, and their interaction with one another is just perfect. And number 2 is the animated film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now this is still my favourite film of 2018. This film topped Black Panther, Infinity War, Incredibles 2. I mean, this is a great way to get into Miles Morales, but also the other Spider people like Spider-Gwen, Noir Spider-Man, Spider-Ham. We got a rundown older version of Peter Parker, which was such an interesting character study. I mean, it has game-changing animation and such a sick soundtrack. You can't call yourself a Spider-Man fan if you haven't seen this film. So of course my favourite is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is the comic book film that captured the cons of being a superhero. Peter Parker is struggling with rent and college. He's trying so hard to look out for his best friend and his aunt. He wants to be with the woman he loves, but he doesn't want to see her suffer. It took everything we loved about the first film and just elevated it. I mean, Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is one of the best comic book films put to film. It has so many great action scenes. The best scene alone is when he's trying to stop a train to save people, but he hasn't got his mask, but he doesn't care because he's too busy trying to stop a train. Even though people can see him, it just proves that Spider-Man is the greatest superhero of all time. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Go like, share and subscribe. Let me know, where would you rank all the Spider-Man films? Go check out my Facebook, my Twitter and my Instagram page. You guys are awesome. I've got your back.